I wanted just to say a word of thanks to our speakers coming. Many of you know Mike Arvola already. Mike and Renee have been in this church longer than I've been here. Renee was actually on the search committee that called me here, and so it's a lovely thing that Mike is coming to speak and share. I just wanted to give you a bit of background on how we came about this topic of inclusive language in worship. An Old Testament professor used to say that Scripture and theology, and that God was like a jewel that you would have in your hand, and that as you turned it, it would refract different colors. He said part of our work is to actually turn that jewel and to see the many faces, the many colors, the many displays of God, and not to get stuck on one color. So our work is to turn it and to see the wisdom literature in Scripture, the God who opens our eyes, the God who, and as we begin to reflect these multiple colors, we become more and more open to our world. Part of, I think, of what Mike brought to the table was not just how to turn this jewel, but also what about the eyes who were taking in this light? What about those who might be colorblind, those who might see in different spectrums of colors? How do we begin to speak to them? And how do we reflect and refract the colors of God that are many, varied to the people, that are many and varied and loved and beloved of God? And so this is a witness of this church, is a remarkable thing that we can actually speak of the many colors, faces, and the wonder of creation and the wonder that is each of you, that is unique and varied and prized and valued. And so today we're turning the jewel of it. That's what we're doing. And we're seeing how to turn that jewel in ways to open our minds, to open our ways to our neighbors, and to that God who is larger than the one color of that jewel. So Mike, I thank you for coming and sharing. Mike, from our conversations of this, got kind of roped in, but also felt very called to this, felt very passionate. So just be careful about what you're passionate about, because you could be preaching, and we're excited because I think of all the wonderful things that Mike brings, some of it is just himself. His humor, his willingness to wear shorts, and as he's preaching, I love it. So Mike, we hear you gladly, and thank you.
Good morning, UBC. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about inclusive language with you this morning. This beautiful, beautiful morning in July. For those of you who know me, I'm Mike Arvola, as Adam alluded to. I still am, so last time I checked. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm also all of those things, but I'd like to give you a little bit of an insight of my journey to Columbus and to UBC. So, this is a map of the Midwest, or a small part of the Midwest. I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Once I graduated Fort Wayne, I went to Purdue University and needed to find myself a place. I went to camp, church camp, and I worked there. I went to Indianapolis as an intern. I went to Muncie as an intern. I then graduated from Purdue, worked in West Lafayette for a while, got my master's degree in education, and taught a year in Plymouth, Indiana. Then Renee and I met and moved back to West Lafayette. We got married, we moved to Ann Arbor, got some kitties, 2 of them right there, Tess and Nora. We then moved to Minneapolis, and with our kitties, of course. And then we found ourselves in Columbus. So we've progressed from place to place for many different reasons, for Renee's career, for jobs, for things like that, and just all of that. So over my lifetime, I've been new many, many times. I've seen how hard it is to be new. I've seen how hard it is to be a place for new people. Sometimes it's easy to get stuck in the rut and be for ourselves. So, to me, that newness is part of why inclusiveness is important to me. Being included is something that a lot of us search for. It is very important. So, Renee and I, as we've been included here, one of the things that we have done here is we've tried to make a point of using inclusive language. This started when we were asked to record the Lord's Prayer or Jesus' Prayer as he taught us, but we also started using different language. We started using things that took the same meaning but presented it in a different light. And we record those videos in our home in different locations and send those off as a way of showing, of turning that gem, as Adam alluded to. Because it's important to us that we do that. So, the next thing is, when I spoke here about 11 months ago, in August of 2021, I spoke about community. And one of the things that I asked for when I spoke here was that the word Father in the Lord's Prayer be changed. And I asked that for a reason, right? I'm not going to get to that reason just yet. Got to keep you in your seat somehow. So, but before we begin, I do want to make kind of a preference. I want to acknowledge my bias and my background. I identify as male, he, him, his, and I was raised as such. So my background and my perspective, the lens at which I view things is through that lens. Everybody else's lens is different, but I want to make sure that I acknowledge that what I say is coming through that lens. I don't intend to say anything that's kind of with that lens, but it's going to happen. So just an acknowledgement, okay? So what is inclusive language? In the Guidelines for Inclusive Language, published by the Linguistic Society of America, inclusive language is language that acknowledges diversity, conveys respect to all people, is sensitive to differences, and promotes equal opportunities. In church, this focus started with gender inclusiveness, but over time, it has expanded to include race, people with disabilities, and other groups of cultures, age, so on and so on. To further this kind of view of inclusive language, the counseling department at Northwestern University describes the importance of inclusive language by saying, how language is used, especially by governments and education systems, can deeply impact how we view race, gender, and cultures. In reference to gender bias in the English language, Dr. Michelle Krulis at Northwestern says, it's just rooted in our vocabulary, but we need to be looking at neutrality, looking at providing language that is inviting to all people. If an individual hears you speaking in a certain way that is exclusionary, it isolates them from a conversation with you. Being inclusive with language is about inviting people in for discussions, not making assumptions. So to me, these statements show that different cultures, experiences, perceptions are at the root of what inclusive language is. It's what it's based on. It's about understanding that not everybody is the same, accepting that, and working to include others. These differences can be hard to understand. How can I understand, how can we understand something that we do not perceive, that we do not experience, but accept it in others? To help with this, I would like to use several different types of illusions to show how we can see and hear the same thing, but our interpretation may not be the same. So, I would like for you guys to look at this image. Is the train moving in or out of the tunnel? How many people think that the train is moving into the tunnel? Okay? How many people look at that and say that, no, that train is moving outside of the zone. Huh. Weird. How many of you can switch it? Most of us. So, if you're having trouble switching it, what I tend to do is I look up here, and then I look down here. And then that seems to start my brain to be able to switch it back and forth, or I can make it do this. Huh. Some of you may have seen this one before. Which way is this dancer spinning? How many think the dancer is spinning clockwise? How many people think the dancer is spinning counterclockwise? Huh. So, this one's a little harder, was a little harder for me to switch. So, to help with that, here's one that is spinning counterclockwise. For those of you who saw it spinning the other way, can you see it now? Yeah. Can you?
No.
No?
I'm stuck.
Yeah. Adam, I'll help you a little bit. Okay, so for those of you that saw it the other way, here it's going. This next one may help you. It helped me. Is when I first saw this one, I could only see it one way. I could not see it for the life of me until I found this image or this GIF. I could not see it spinning the other way. So when you look at this one, you look at one side and you look at the other. For me, I can make it switch back and forth so that the leg just kind of doing like this, right? So how many people can only saw it the one way, but now can see it both ways? Interesting. Huh. Let's not get lost in that forever. To borrow the internet sensation image, what color is this dress? Who wants to take a guess? I mean, we probably have seen this in a cricket, right?
I see golden white.
You see golden right. Renee, what do you see? Huh? Yeah. I see golden white. But other people, how many people see the blue and black? How many people see the white and gold? Weird. One thing that I did notice for myself as I've been looking at this, I only see white and gold until I started looking through my periphery. If I look through my periphery, I see black and blue. Does that work for you guys? For anybody that can see it? No? It works for me, so that was weird, but. Okay? Let's try the sound real quick. Is it on? This is another internet sensation. No, hold on. Who hears the word Yanni? Yanni. Yeah. You hear Yanni?
I now hear you, Laurel.
Weird. Okay, so Adam and I were doing this before. He heard Yanni this morning, but now he hears Laurel. And the funny thing for me is that's what happened to me. I heard it the first time, then I heard Yanni, but now all I hear is Laurel. My brain is weird. Okay, so we asked who heard Yanni, but who heard Laurel? Yeah, so this one's about 56% supposed to hear Laurel, and 44% is supposed to hear Yanni. And a lot of people base this one on age. Apparently younger people or people like kids hear Yanni more, and a lot of older people hear Laurel. All right, now to borrow from the internet yet again. And one of my favorite YouTube videos is from Film Theory.
Brains actually are. First, just listen. Don't go down in the comments yet. What did you just hear? Did you hear this word? Or did you hear this? Now, try switching between them by focusing on one word at a time. If everything's going according to plan, you should be able to switch between them based on which word you have currently in your vision. And now, here's the original video, which, as you watch it, should actually strengthen your perception of Green Needle. But here's the kicker. What's actually being said here is brainstorm. That's...
Okay, so this one is different for me. Like, I can hear it either way, but sometimes my brain gets locked into one. So, who heard brainstorm? Who heard Green Needle? What? All right. Yeah, this time I could only hear brainstorm, but I have been able to switch back and forth. Okay, let me turn that off. Where am I? So, in these examples, as we clearly showed, some of us could hear it one way. Some of us could hear it the other way. Some of us could switch back and forth. What? So, if this is true for simple static images and sounds, like I'm not messing with you guys. Those are the same images and sounds, no matter what you hear or see. How much more complicated is it with something that, like words, with complicated meanings in human experience? So, generally it is said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So, let's try something. Think of an apple, okay? Who would like to describe this apple to me?
It's round.
Okay, what else?
One's red.
Yours was red. Okay, anybody else?
It has a stem.
It has a stem.
It's my palm.
It's in your palm. How's it taste?
Crispy.
Crispy? Sweet? Maybe?
Sour.
So, sour? Tart? So, one of the things I didn't write down, but I did get in the rabbit hole, and Renee told me not to include it, but I'm going to say it here now. Did you know that there are over 100 different types of apples grown in the United States, all ranging the spectrum of what we just covered? So, I put a picture up here, assuming nobody would think of this. Is this what you pictured? One person, two people. So, I actually, the Granny Smith apple, I really like. So, if it's this complicated to think of the same thing with a word as simple and as common as apple, what about more complicated things? More complex words. For me, an example of this complex word is father, and it gets back to the reason I was talking about switching from Father to Creator in the Jesus Prayer, and why I advocate for inclusive language. In simple terms, I have a weird association with the term father. The stereotypical good father shown in movies and TVs is a superhuman person that has many qualities. They are a teacher, a hero, a provider, a protector, is affectionate and loving, dependable, a fixer, stoic, leads by example, and so much more. Many of you, with these words, identify that with your father, and that's great. But most of these, in addition, most of these are also attributed to God. And the thing that I realize now that I didn't as a kid, or as I grew up, was that being all of these things, all of the time, is unattainable for most people. We're human. We have our ups and downs, and just sometimes fail. My father is a textbook provider and fixer. He worked as a mechanic as we grew up, providing food, clothing, and shelter for us as my mom stayed home and raised us. After work, he'd come home and work in the garden, go to his garage, and to get stuff done. And he was a quiet man. He kind of liked to keep to himself. But if you needed something fixed, or if we needed food, you better believe we had it, and it got fixed. Unfortunately for me as a kid and as a young adult, I focused on the qualities that my father maybe have not shown. If I wanted to know how to fix something, I didn't get taught because time was a valuable resource to him that it was faster for him just to fix it and get it to me, right? It's just the nature of some things are. If you wanted to spend time with him, he liked to really be by himself. So I felt like I missed out on some things. I became jealous of friends and others that would talk about their relationship with their father. Oh, we went out and we played golf, or I don't play golf, so I didn't care about that one. But we'd go out and do other things, movies, things like that. Those things I didn't have. I was jealous of the way God was referred to as Father. If God is supposed to be the perfect Father, it reminds me that my Father isn't that, right? Thus, the mixed bag of emotions and feelings when I think of the word Father. When God is referred to as Father, I can't help but think of my father, or at least the complicated progression of my interpretation of how things happen, right? What is real? I don't know. But, so, this word is too human for me to represent God. And maybe that's the point, but it has been a point that has been too hard for me to overcome at certain points in my life. And even now, sometimes I struggle with it. I tend to refer to God as God, loving God, creator, giver, healer, and tend to avoid terms that associate God with people. But just as with the illusions, we see and feel and experience things differently. And maybe, more importantly, not everyone sees and feels and experiences the same thing. To some, going to the doctor is a positive experience that helps them get better. To others, it is a trip filled with anxiousness and worry and a feeling of it's never gonna get better. A mother is someone who cares for them deeply, who has raised them, or is someone who caused them much physical and or emotional pain. A God referred to as he, him, has some positive male images and reminds people of those, and that it's a thing that brings them closer to God. To others, it is a constant reminder of a patriarchal society and how that patriarchal society has been abused in the church. These differences are as varied as the people involved. Now, I recognize that God as Father is powerful to some, and that is great. I'm glad that works for you. But there are others that other terms, creator, the first song had a litany of things that God can be known as. The verses had a couple different versions of what God is referred to. Maybe some of those are just as powerful for somebody else. So solely focusing on one term for God can be hurtful to some people. Only referring God in the masculine can be exclusive of other wonderful characteristics that God offers, and reinforces a false view of the patriarchal church. This is why inclusive language is important for the church. The Episcopal Church website describes inclusive language as follows: spoken and written language that intentionally avoids word use that is needlessly gender-specific or exclusive. Inclusive language also means the use of male and female imagery and metaphors in a balanced way to express the truths we know of God. Inclusive language may challenge the church to discover new deep depths of meaning and possibility in the words of faith. As an aside, kind of turning that gem. Traditional English refers to Traditional English usage referred to God and humanity with male pronouns. A male pronoun often used generically when the pronoun could refer to either a man or a woman. This traditional English usage came to be perceived as demeaning and exclusive of women. It was judged to be offensive by women and men who called for more inclusive language, especially in the life and worship of the church. This call for inclusive language was rooted in the theological understanding that God includes and transcends human masculinity and femininity. God is neither male nor female. Both women and men are equally loved and included by God and should be valued and shown respect in the church's language. So, word for word from the Episcopal Church. The point is this. We understand the language. We use... Slow down. The point is this. We use language to help us understand the infinite, unfathomable God we follow. We are also understanding that people are different, complex, sensitive to different things, and that using or not using some language is best for them and may be for us. Words are powerful and important. However, I would argue that they're just a start to it. We start by using inclusive language to welcome others and provide a comforting and safe space for them, for us. Then we be inclusive. We make the changes needed within our church socially, systematically, to create that space where everyone is and feels included. So that when someone new or different comes in, they feel welcomed by us. As Renee and I moved to this place, we've seen, to many different places, we've seen how hard it is to get that right. We've also seen places where it can be unconditionally welcoming and accepting too. And I think we're on that path. We're here for a reason, and we felt that when we came here. So, I'll ask everyone here, or listening online, what are changes that we can make in our own church, in our own life? What words, actions, processes, systems can we change? Can we do differently to make us more inclusive, more welcoming, more accepting? How can you as an individual help with this so that it's not just somebody else's job? Somebody else's job to make it. How can you do something? Don't even answer here. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand and do that. That's fine. These questions reminded me of a conversation that happened a couple of weeks ago here in the church, and then later on when I was playing games with David during the week. David's not here for those of you who don't know David. After church, or during church, we sang a particular song. We sang Gesu, Gesu. And within that song, this verse stuck out to me. It's verse 1, sung after the refrain. I'm not a music person, so I got that wrong. But just whatever. Here's the words. Kneels at the feet of his friends, silently washes their feet. Master who acts as slave to them. My thought was, is being a slave good? Would we say something like this in our day-to-day lives? I'm going to act like a slave to you. No. People would, no. Why are we singing in church? A couple of days later, I had a similar conversation with David Tomasacci as we were finishing up playing some games. And he just went, to sum up what he said, you know, this time when we sang that song, it hit different. It's a beautiful song. This is me now, not David. It is a beautiful song. It's a traditional song. But is the language offensive in it? Does the meaning change if we change a couple of words to be more inclusive? Does it matter if the word master and slave are used? Or can it be slightly different? I think on our journey with inclusive language, these types of conversations and these things are going to happen. And I think the important thing is that we talk about it and we recognize things. And I think that's okay and good. So, to conclude, a church that uses inclusive language is being aware of how our words affect others, being intentional with the words we use, and acting in a way that is consistent with those words, so that people's differences and are accepted and glorified, and it helps us all get closer to that wonderful God we know. It starts with words and ends with action. Thank you.